Mick Cronin and the Bruins, they are getting some respect in some way early preseason polls. And what does it look like looking at Big Ten play next year?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast and is available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support if you're an everydayer. We talked yesterday about football hitting the portal, special teams getting a new edge rusher, and we got more transfers coming in for football as well. Men's volleyball national championship, but we got lots of content on this episode today as well. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more by visiting FanDuel. New customers get $150 in bonus bets when you win any $5 bet. That's $150 when winning any $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, where we get started today is the UCLA men's basketball opponents were released for the Big Ten, and we're going to correlate to the respect UCLA's been getting with the amount of portals brought in, the guys who have left via the draft, via the portal, for a team that expects to legitimately compete. After the latest transfer committed in Dominic Harris, and Badike announced he was transferring out, he's getting some love and looks across the country via the transfer portal. UCLA, I was looking at some transfer, the early rankings. I'm looking at ESPN right now, way too early for the 24-25 season. UCLA was as high as 15. Now, if you want to go based off personal rankings, you want to go based off analytics, you can see UCLA as high as number 8 in the country. If you want to go analytically, if you want to go rankings, I've seen them as high as 15. Currently, if you look at the ESPN way too early top 25, the Bruins sit at 15 and drop 4 spots despite getting somebody who fits the system, what the Bruins lacked last year in shooting in Dominic Harris, with a lot of guys, 6 newcomers after 8 newcomers a year ago. Mick Cronin completely gutted the roster, gets all the replacements to guys who are leaving, and upgrades at spots that desperately needed upgrades, whether it's shooting, increased guard defensive toughness, scoring, and athleticism in the low post beyond just what Adem Bona brought a year ago, and replacing Adem Bona. So this is a team that, let's remember, they're bringing in Bilodeau, Kobe Johnson, Eric Daly Jr., William Kyle III, Sky Clark, in addition to Dominic Harris. I'm trying to look, ESPN, this is what they say the projected starting lineup is. I'm not going to project that right now, but this is what they think. Andrews, Mack, Johnson, Stefanovic, Bilodeau. Now, there's been talk that Johnson's going to take a lot of Stefanovic's minutes at the 3, even though there's a lot of love given from Mick Cronin to Stefanovic as a leader, as a near 40-minute per game player last year. That wasn't exactly the case, but he played a lot of minutes. There can be a whole lot of debate as to who the starting lineup is. Regardless of who's in the lineup, who's coming off the bench, how those flip-flop, the Bruins are a top-tier contender next year. Top 15, I think closer to top 10, and a team that with a really good draw, easily national championship contenders next March. And in my mind, a good bet to make a solid run, not just to get in the tournament, not to the second weekend, but to truly push with what they've brought into a third weekend and run for a deeper run to a Sweet 16, to an Elite 8, and be like the team in 21 where they got to the Final Four, and hopefully for UCLA in a national championship game. I was looking at the schedule UCLA has, because they did announce fairly recently that this is who the Bruins are going to play at home, on the road, and for both. And I think the Big Ten, in my opinion, got it right as to how the schedule is going to work. UCLA is going to play USC, Oregon, and Washington all 2 times, home and home. For a team that's going to travel a lot, that must be a sigh of relief for Mick Cronin. And that could have been easily a thing the Bruins got, but when you bring in Washington, Oregon, that is going to help so much of the other schedules in the non-football sports, like basketball. Maybe it'll help in baseball, whatever it may be. The Bruins get 6 games, 3 road games specifically, or 1 you don't even got to get off the bus for more than 20 minutes, depending on traffic. Could be an hour, could be a long trip. You fly to Oregon, you've done that a bunch of times. You fly to Seattle, okay. Instead of making it Eugene and Corvallis, it'll be Seattle and Eugene. A little tougher of a trip. Seattle's a little farther of a playing trip than we might think, but still, UCLA, when it comes to 6 games against those 3 schools, none of them are ranked above UCLA. You've got Dana Altman, who I think is slowly on his way to retiring, USC, who just has a new head coach, and Washington that just fired their head coach. That's 6 of your Big Ten games right there. Now, Eric Musselman is going to have a lot to say, and I think we'll build the roster that can compete either this year or pretty soon for USC. Besides the point, you get 6 games against teams who I think the Bruins could very well have a very fun shot at beating. Oregon was listed just outside the top 25 in this way too early poll. But in terms of iconic games, you get Michigan State, Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa, Penn State at home, Iowa State, Wisconsin. Those are the teams you bring in at home. Now, Ohio State is pushing a top 25. The Bruins need to get some revenge from last year. Wisconsin, Michigan State, those are some big names coming to town. But the unique ones is I was looking at where people are projecting different teams to be. Super early, I know, but we're going to have some fun anyway here in May. Purdue, national runners-up this year. They, without Zach Edey, are projected to be a top 13 team, top 12, pushing a top 10, with still some size on their guards. A good guard that, between the likes of Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, they've got Trey Kaufman-Wren. They've got guys mixing into bigger front court roles and more. They've got a team that can certainly compete. The Bruins have to go to play at Purdue next year. And the only other team ahead of UCLA is Indiana, who has got Umar Ballo, so still former rivals turning into current rivals, Miles Rice, and Caden Carlisle. So you've got 3 former Pac-12 players who the Bruins all faced, all on teams that beat UCLA last year, and that's Indiana. The Bruins have to go to Assembly Hall. So in terms of how the Big Ten schedule will break down, because I haven't fully explained it, UCLA gets 3 2 plays, which is a home and home. That's against SC, it's against Washington and Oregon. Then they have the rest of the schedule, which is either an individual home game against schools or an individual road game against schools, somewhat turning into a bit of a football schedule, a home game and a road game. And UCLA has to go on the road next year to Purdue and to Indiana, which I think will be rocking environments. Not that they won't already, but considering the hype UCLA has going to the Big Ten, you've got Ohio State projected just behind UCLA. Maryland, UCLA, I'm pretty sure has to play on the road next year after they played them on the road in December of 22. 3 of UCLA's potential toughest games this upcoming season are all on the road. Indiana, Purdue, and Maryland. Not based off environment, but based on potential toughness. And Northwestern's been a perennial tournament team. You wonder what that team's going to look like. That's on the road. Rutgers has been scrappy. UCLA is getting some love in the top 25, and I think so. But the schedule release in terms of who they're going to play at home and on the road, based on what it looks like now with the transfer portal window closed and us having a somewhat better idea of what these teams look like, there'll be a lot of tough road games. So the only thing to wonder about a team that might not win in the Big Ten is because look at those road games. Those are tough against very tough teams. You don't get to bring them back to Pauley and force them to travel across the country where the Bruins can pick off some wins. So the importance for next year's UCLA team, defend home court, sweep the West Coast schools, go 4-2, 5-1, 4-2 at the worst against Oregon, USC, and Washington. That's easier said than done. And think about last year. There's no respect. There's a lot of question marks, a lot of freshmen coming in expected to develop and play right away. A lot of freshmen turning into sophomores or sophomores turning into juniors. That needed a lot of uptick in playing time. The Bruins expected a lot. And now Mick Cronin is expecting a lot of guys who are double-digit scorers, proven guys at the highest of levels. Now, can they gel together? That's the biggest question. But that's where I wonder how tough Cronin is going to be in this non-conference schedule. How far is he going to travel? Is it going to be based West Coast and then travel in conference? Is a lot of Vegas trips? Is the furthest east he's going to go in the non-conference not going to be that far? Those are all to be determined. But for now, UCLA getting a lot of love. Top 15, top 20 hype. Scoring, they've addressed a lot of needs. Mick Cronin reverse course, and it's going to be fun. but it will be a challenging Big Ten schedule with the opponent release. Just like football is going to have their challenges as well, but not because they're not doing the best things they can in the portal to build depth at positions of need immediately. Even though the window is closed, you can still get commits from guys in the portal. Who's the latest? I'll tell you about that next on Locked On UCLA. Now we're going to talk about FanDuel because, hey, it's a big-time opportunity. Winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. And FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets when winning any $5 bet. Again, that's $150 to bet on spreads, player props, money lines, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Cruising on here in Locked On UCLA, even though we're having some technical glitches, we're rocking and rolling because the Bruins continue to hit the portal, right? And whether it's someone who's going to play this year, probably not. It's UCLA and DeShaun Foster going once again to add depth in a position of need in the portal. And the thing is, I think UCLA is getting some talent here with Demarcus Davis, who is coming over, a Washington transfer who has twice entered his name into the portal, got to school early, expecting Kalen DeBoer to build on the hype from taking the Huskies to the national championship game, was on the Husky sideline at that championship game when they faced off against Michigan, and now went in the portal. Then Jed Fish got hired, thought about it, and after battling and watching what the two quarterbacks were, Will Rogers and everything in between over there at Washington, it was Davis who decided once again to head into the portal. Visited UCLA. I was wondering, okay, the Bruins have two class of 24 quarterbacks already. They have Justin Martin, who is the clear #2 at this moment, but has been in UCLA a few years and certainly would need to win the job if he will even compete against Garbers this year for the starting nod or in the future. And still, Davis commits to UCLA. So this is a guy who comes in, can add some depth to a room, highly ranked 4-star freshman recruit. Think about this. He's technically transferring, but in reality, it's just like a late commit. Think about this as a late NLI, National Letter of Intent signee, as opposed to a real transfer. Someone who's put in spring game reps, seen what it's like to be in a college atmosphere, a quote-unquote Big Ten atmosphere, wants to, I wonder, either fight for playing time, fight for backup, just get reps, maybe be closer to home. I'm not entirely sure, but this is a guy who visited UCLA. Remember, the Bruins are without Colin Schley, who transferred. Obviously, Moore went to Oregon. Now the Bruins go and pull apart from a program who, former Pac-12 rival, now current Big Ten foe, where he's going to join Carson Gordon and Henry Hasselbeck in the class of 24. The third incoming true freshman quarterback to go along with a third year in Justin Martin. He's a class of 22 quarterback. And then you've got Garbers, and where UCLA once again pulls another former Washington quarterback, technically in the portal, although he never really suited up for the Huskies, and bring him to UCLA. So this is somebody who found a way to think, all right, am I going to go here? What's happening? And Davis says, all right, I'm going to go to UCLA. And this is another example of where DeShaun Foster says, hey, I want to address all these things. Offensive line. Think of that wish list he listed. All right. He's getting some big guys, right? Makaheli, Unije, some bigger guys who are starters or honored in the Mountain West or, from different places across the country. He's beefing up the O-line, and he hopefully can give Ethan Garbers enough time to throw and create some running lanes for his deep backfield or the backfield in general, just to throw it to your talented receiving core. Then he's like, all right, I want to make sure the D-line gets a little better. Brings on some talent and builds some depth on the D-line from edge rushing, some better D-line presence in the edge, right? Sharif Say coming lately on the edge, keeping Tawia. Now you look at the quarterback room. all right, some guys leaving, right? Well, Moore had already left. Then College Slee had surprise departure. So initially he says, all right, let's think about this. We got two guys truly competing. I liked what Martin, in some limited attempts, did in the spring game, throwing the ball down the field. I think, in my opinion, some throws look better than Ethan Garber's did in the spring game. But that's neither here nor there. I think Garber's is a solidified starter at this moment until Martin does something in fall ball to supplant him. UCLA needs more quarterback depth because what happened last year, UCLA could not protect their quarterback. So naturally, you would have guys get banged up. Garbers, Moore, Schlee, all were getting banged up. So you need a lot of depth. I've seen quarterback rooms. There's some seasons where guys, it's just terrible. The injury bug can be terrible sometimes. And when a team can't move the ball or read the defense as well or handle the signals, process the collegiate way of calling games, especially with what Eric Bieniemy is bringing to the table, you're going to need some depth. So DeShaun Foster goes out, finds himself another talented freshman, add some competition to there, some guys who had already kind of signed and were sticking with UCLA after the Chip Kelly era. And I wonder how many of those 24 quarterbacks are going to stick around, right? Think of the guys who were brought in, getting some love, getting some recruitment, limited there is, because Chip Kelly wasn't going after any high school guys, to come in and go to UCLA. So I wonder between the Gordons, the Hasselbecks, and in the end here, now Davis coming to UCLA, who is going to hit the portal? Now that you can just hit the portal aggressively as many times as you want, as long as you have the grades and everything progress towards degree of sorts in this day and age of NIL, transfer portaling, and trying to stay in your program year in and year out. And the Bruins, they have some depth. I wonder how many Chip Kelly recruits will be here next year, within a year. Because you can't completely gut the roster, but there are certain pieces that DeShaun Foster's maybe signaling, hey, compete, win the job. I love you, but you got to earn your spot. And I wonder how much we'll see from year to year, a complete cycling in and out of a former coach's roster. Because in this transfer portal day and age, you could do that not in 2 to 3, 4 years. That's maybe a year and a half, depending on when the coach leaves and you're hired. So DeShaun Foster's recruiting clock is much later than what it would have been if he was hired in December, could have recruited some guys, gotten a late signing day and a transfer portal window, maybe 2 of those in between. No, he maybe got half of those things, and he's looking for 24s, 25s at this moment. But I do like what he's done so far with Demarcus Davis coming in to UCLA, a talented guy. I was reading on a Washington website that he wasn't necessarily getting a lot of reps behind DeMon Williams Jr. and Will Rogers, who transferred from Mississippi State, but he is coming back to SoCal because he went to Etiwanda. So he is somebody who is being closer to home, who maybe wants to just be a little closer to home and find a way to compete. And if he's going to do all those things, do that in SoCal as opposed to Washington. I'm not really sure the mindset just yet, but the Bruins, I think, are getting something, adding depth, addressing places and pieces of need, and doing it immediately. Whether it's injury, portal, NFL draft, Sean Foster's doing it for this year's teams and the future, all in one fell swoop. Speaking of a team that are they a team destiny? I don't know. But a team that has been battling and grinding their way to a conference championship, the UCLA softball team. The Pac-12 tournament, the final and second ever Pac-12 conference tournament, is going to begin during the first full week of May, second full week of May. And UCLA, Pac-12 champs. Let's talk about them next and what it looks like to be in a more wide open year in softball. Can the Bruins have a surprise run after their start? Let's talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. All right, game off. We got to pause here because we're going to talk about Monopoly Go. I know you're saying flag on the play. You've already talked about Monopoly Go, but there's so much good stuff in this game because in Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends. Maybe you want to roast them, but you can team up with them for timed tournaments, work together to build up each other's boards. And the more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. There's so much to get. Unique stickers, new playing pieces, hilarious emojis, and more. Because with Monopoly Go, it feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. You can win big and get massive multipliers for everything you win with and/or rent frenzies. Always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and download it for free on Google Play and on the App Store. Game on. All right, cruising on here in Locked On UCLA. Zach with you guys. Is the Bruin women in their softball ranks have found themselves maybe on the fringes of the top 25 to now a clear cemented top 5, top 6 team that was maybe battling to host a regional and a super on its way to a potential Women's College World Series berth a year after they got bounced 2-0 at home with a team that was expected, in my mind, to make a run to the finals and compete against Oklahoma before the Sooners once again dominated the sport. This year, Kelly, in a way, her team was scrapping and clawing, and now they are the top team in the Pac-12. They won it. They swept Arizona State over the weekend after a hard-fought final regular season weekend at Easton Stadium, beating Arizona, a longtime Pac-12 softball rival, where the Bruins had to come back down 7-0, win on senior day 11-7, and then swept the Sun Devils into oblivion as the Bruins won the Pac-12 outright. Technically, they tied Stanford in the win column. Both teams were 17 wins. The Bruins went 17-4, while the Cardinal went 17-7. The only difference there is with UCLA having swept Stanford at Stanford, it doesn't really matter because even if the Bruins played those extra games that they missed 2 in the Cal series and another game in somewhere else, the Bruins already clearly showed that they're doing good. And with them as the 1 seed, they play the winner of Oregon State, Arizona State. If they win, they play the winner of Arizona, Washington in a sneaky tournament semifinal matchup if they can get past the Beavers or the Sun Devils in a single elimination softball conference tournament. And then they can maybe try and win their first and only Pac-12 tournament in its final edition. It's being hosted at Stanford, and this is what the Bruins have to contend with here in collegiate softball. This is currently what the rankings look like at the ESPN.com USA softball rankings on the NCAA.com website. You got Texas number 1. Remember, earlier this year, this is a UCLA team that got dominated by Texas. They played a close game, but they got dominated by the Longhorns in one game that was embarrassing at home. But when they threw an arm that they probably would use in the circle, as the Bruins currently 34-10, they lost 3-2, and a day later lost 16-0. Now, they faced Oklahoma State and got blasted as well. But this is a team that you look at the rankings, you got Texas, Oklahoma State, 2 teams the Bruins have faced, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Duke, and then those mighty Bruins sitting at the 6th spot just ahead of either Florida or Stanford, depending on the rankings that you use. You got Washington pushing the top 10. You've got Arizona, who's been going in and out of the top 20. Oregon pushing the top 25. Cal, who's been fluttering in and out based on the rankings. It's a very packed Pac-12 and log jammed in the standings. But the Bruins came out yet again, despite sputtering in the early portion of the season. Remember, this is a team in Kelly Inouye Perez's squad, lost an early series to Washington in late March, right when the NCAA tournament was happening. She might have forgotten about that and maybe forgotten about the team that didn't do so well, losing to Florida in a close game at the Judy Garment Classic, beating Tennessee, who's ahead of them in the rankings, losing to Baylor, beating some good teams, losing to some quality teams that are around them in the standings, or the rankings, I should say. But they have found themselves, as of late, dominating play, winning the series against Arizona, sweeping Arizona State, winning their midweeks, and have got really hot after a sweep against Stanford. After the rainouts in mid-April, they have been dominant. And who has been the key? Well, Maya Brady getting red hot. Everything starts with her. She won Pac-12 Player of the Week in the final week of the regular season. I remember I broadcasted one of her games when she played Long Beach State. Her batting average at the time, in late April, was 370. It sits at the end of the regular season at 410. A batting average over 400 when she was sitting like 370. In her last 8 games, 6 of those games, she has hit. She's got multiple hits in those games. Hit a salami to crush the Wildcats in a 2-homer game. 15 home runs, 58 RBIs because of some rain cancellations, with still the Pac-12 tournament and the NCAA tournament to come. She could easily surpass, with a very good postseason, her individual season record career high of hits. Not near that at the moment, but still with the power. Second best batting average, second best on base percentage of her career compared to last year. She has really risen to the occasion as to the dominant player for the reigning Pac-12 Player of the Year. Then you've got Charlize Palacios, who has been clutch home run hitter. I watched her hit a pinch hit blast to win a midweek game against Long Beach. She hit a big blast to beat Arizona, tie the game. She was clutch with a bunch of swings. 13 home runs. Megan Grant hitting 360. Jordan Woolery. You got Mayonio, Alchin, even Taylor Stevens, who was all pushing 300 batting average for a team that was struggling to hit early, but they've done things as of late to get the ball in play and crush it around the yard. But the problem was early specifically was this Bruins team and who could throw in the circle. A lot of the appearances lately, a lot of the innings have been going to Caitlin Terry. It's Taylor Tinsley and Caitlin Terry. Those are the two arms you're going to see for right now for UCLA. Terry has been eating up innings. 2.5 ERA. The Glendale, Arizona freshman, who was the Pac-12 Freshman of the Week in mid-March, dominating. And this is someone who is unbeaten for a long time in her season so far this year. But now that I'm trying to pull up the stats for me as well, Caitlin Terry this year, going over the numbers, is 16-1 in 20 starts, 31 appearances, a save, 139 innings pitched, 125 strikeouts to 55 walks. And it was only a few, not too recently, fairly recently, I should say, that she actually lost. Tinsley, who comes from the right side, a little softer, more spin on the ball. You have Terry, who brings the heat from the left side. You got a 1-2 combo where they change your eye level. They come from different angles. The righty-lefty combo helps, but they're very short. They don't got a lot of depth for pitching. It's just those two who come in, and UCLA has to hope they have a good game. If they don't, Bruins might be out for it. They do have a tendency to give up the long ball to some good teams. They've got 33 doubles given up between them, 32 home runs given up between them. But if they can keep the ball in the ballpark against the best teams and against some of these early mid-majors that you're going to face in the tournament or in the Pac-12 tournament, then hopefully the Bruins will get enough offense as opposed to last year when the Bruins couldn't muster up any offense whatsoever in the tournament. But after seeing this team, I wonder if they can scrap across, get some runs. They've been hitting clutch. Maybe this is more of a team of destiny than last year's team that won a lot of close games early against some decent competition and could not come through late. I wonder with what the returners from last year can bring to this year, and a little healthier in my mind, the pitching that is coming up with the freshmen. Got Tinsley, of course. You don't got Faremo coming in there blasting the strike zone and striking out a bunch, but you got enough, and hopefully enough clutch hitting and lessons from last year's debacle that this team can come in and succeed in the tournament. Oklahoma looks beatable. They just lost at home to Oklahoma State, who won for the first time, I think, in close to 30 years in Norman, a series. Got a win, let alone a series win for the Cowgirls. Texas, the Bruins, when they brought their best, played them to a one-run game. You faced the likes of Florida and played them to a one-run game, close affairs. So UCLA has faced some tough teams, gotten some wins, taken some L's. They've weathered the storm that was SoCal weather in March and April and the competition in Pac-12 play. I think this is a team that after how it started, I was out. I was like, come on. Looking at them, wondering, they are a little vulnerable if the bats aren't awake to another early exit after how they'd seen them play in person. I would think they can be vulnerable. But after seeing what they did on senior day, how they've risen to the occasion when they play the top teams, swinging away against Arizona down 7-0 on senior day, close to being run ruled in that game, sweeping the teams that need to sweep. When they come to play, they are a tough out. But they play down the level of their competition. We could easily look at 2023 Part 2. But if they come to play, if Terry's spinning the ball well, bringing the heat, hitting the zone, UCLA should be ready to rock and roll. And they went from firing into a potential regional hosting bid to pushing a top 5, top 4 seed, looking to host the first 2 rounds if they get there, which is now no longer a given after their long Women's College World Series streak ended last year. And that should make this team hungrier to compete and go deeper in the tournament, as exciting as it would be, which is why you should be here in Locked On UCLA. Like, comment, subscribe, download, and thanks for your support. Review, comment, do it all. So we're going to talk more men's basketball, starting lineups, softball, everything here on Locked On UCLA. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. It's 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.